So my name is Colin Bunting. If you haven't seen me before on here, I do a lot of 3D design stuff. I design at work all day. I work at Sikorsky, so I'm doing 3D CAD all day. Yeah, and this is kind of a different program that maybe isn't used so much in engineering circles, but it is extremely useful, and it has much more to do with sculpting and kind of what they call direct modeling sometimes. So depending on what you're doing, this might be more applicable to what you're doing. So yeah, I guess I hadn't done that before, JR, but does anybody want to talk about what drew you guys to Blender and attending this session, other than, well, yeah, just anybody that wants to talk about what they're looking to get out of this?
Yeah, I mean, Blender is a really cool software, and I love that it's free. I'm Todd, by the way, if I've never met everyone. So I work as like an architect during my day job, and I teach in the evenings, and I teach some software classes, but I've always wanted to learn Blender. Blender is like, it's a free software. It's like really interesting. It's used in many different industries. And I think like architects would have some value in using it for its like super high-end rendering capabilities. So I'm interested in learning a little bit about that, but maybe some like character animation as well. And actually, ironically, playing with Blender for the past 2 weeks now, and I find it to be a really awesome software. But there's a lot to learn, so I'm definitely here to learn.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. I'm an architect, and I've been teaching SketchUp. There's somebody in the SketchUp forums who has a thread titled 30 Reasons to Use Blender. So I've only briefly looked at it.
Oh, cool.
I'm not sure I can do both, but yeah, I want to at least look at it. It does have its own renderer, and it does like UV mapping better. A few other things anyway.
Yeah, very cool. Anybody else? Or
I'm trying to use it because I have started working in ZBrush, and this seems sort of like a natural thing to try as well.
Nice. I'm jealous.
Yeah, I'm
It's a
also
massive
on
amount to
the
learn.
trying to learn for 3D printing. I got a 3D printer as my quarantine project, which I have a question after for you, Colin, like a facilitator question, because
Cool.
I shocked myself so bad it rebooted. But I'm excited to sculpt some stuff.
Yeah, cool.
And we got another vote in the chat for rendering objects for 3D printers, printing miniatures and doll making.
Oh, nice.
I'm super interested in using it specifically, like combining this with maybe some CAD-based stuff to learn how to key models, because I do a lot of garage kits. And so it's super fidgety to do traditionally. So it seems like a really cool application.
Yeah, you guys are all on the kind of thing that I'm very interested in myself, which is kind of the organic side of modeling, like things that you can get from ZBrush or Sculptress or Blender itself, and then blending that with, no pun intended, blending that with software like Fusion 360 or any kind of CAD system that, when I say CAD, I mean it's more like engineering, right? So you can make it work with something functionally rather than just being a complete sculpture. Not that there's anything wrong with the sculpture, but yeah, it's kind of cool to mix those worlds. And Blender starts to do that. It's kind of cool. So yeah, with that, I will just repeat what I said before the recording started in case anybody is interested. I posted a link right at the beginning of the chat. That is basically, if you are happy with this tutorial, I'm happy to go beyond in further weeks and do a little more instruction. I will say I am not an expert in Blender. I'm learning it myself, so I'll do the best I can with the knowledge that I currently have. But the link that I posted is actually somebody on YouTube that he is an expert. He's been doing this for probably a decade, and he's got an excellent tutorial series for how to model a donut. And actually, while we're
so, Colin, I think the folks watching the recording won't see the chat. So it's the Blender Guru.
Yeah,
and
I've been watching
the
him.
video is Blender Beginner Tutorial Part 1
Yeah. Okay.
on YouTube, if you don't want to search it. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good point. Yeah, Blender Guru. You should type that in. It'll pop right up. He's got like 1 million followers and stuff.
Actually, I did step 1 of the donut already.
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, his instructions, I will say, are fantastic. Like, I hope that I measure up even slightly to his instructions because he's fantastic. But
Are we talking like a tourist donut or like a Homer Simpson donut?
It's kind of like a Homer Simpson donut.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Let's see if I have a picture on my phone.
so I'll show you because I've got it actually up on my screen right now. So this is a perfect segue. So screen 1.
That's my donut.
It's beautiful. I love it.
Donut. All right. Oops, sorry. All right.
Sprinkles and all.
Oh, you got all the way to the end.
Oh yeah. So this is just, I'm just gonna pull this up because it's kind of a look ahead that may give you motivation. Where is it? Under frames. Well, I do have a short animation that shows it like sliding on to the into the scene. So this is the last frame in that scene. But all of this stuff that you see here was modeled and rendered with all the materials. All the materials were done in Blender. Everything you see here was done in Blender. So you can do everything from modeling to texturing to full-on animation, where this thing is sliding across the table and it's got motion blur. You know, everything that you can imagine for animation, it's probably able to be done in Blender. So just kind of a cool introduction. And then here's the actual model. You can see it gets pretty colorful. But anyway, so let's start off.
Colin's doing that weird thing where it went to a small box in the corner.
That again, huh? All right, let's try to do a reset then. Oh, you know what? Okay. I think it's because I have a second monitor plugged in, so I'm going to go ahead and unplug that. Just give me a second. Yeah, I forgot about that. Okay.
There was a question in disbelief that you actually made that. So that was a good example.
I promise you that if you follow that link, which is Blender Guru's donut tutorial, it is long. It's probably, I think, 17 parts, and each part is 15 to 20 minutes long. And that's the video itself, so you're going to be spending at least that for each portion, because you're going to pause it and go back and try to do the thing and then go back. But if you're interested, it is well worth the effort. So can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we're just going to start. I'm going to start afresh so that we're all on the same page. All right. So
do you usually manipulate it with the mouse, or do you use a tablet?
I haven't started using my tablet yet with this. Yeah, that's a step beyond my skill right now. but I hear people do it. So yeah, so this is Blender. What you're presented with in the center is called the 3D viewport. And the things always that are a challenge to learn just mentally is how to move around. And I think we should just take some time and kind of figure that out. The way you roll around this is hold down the center mouse button. So the default scene has 3 things in it. There's a cube, and then there's a camera over here, and then there's a light. And so you actually have, like, right off the bat, you have everything you need to render a scene live. So I can move this light around and it will change how it lights the scene. That's pretty cool. So you can just kind of practice rolling around. I know it seems silly, but to familiarize yourself with the program, it's always good to just do the basic PZR.
So, Colin, I tried to move my light, but I clicked it and it highlights, and then it doesn't. It looks like it's still highlighting. How do I move it?
Oh yeah, I kind of jumped ahead. So we'll get into moving stuff. The way that I did that is I hit the key G for grab, and with that selected, so you click it and it's orange, and then you hit G for grab, and then you can kind of move it around.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I didn't mean to jump ahead. I just
No, it's a good point. I was trying to keep you entertained while you were rolling around a block. But yeah, so beyond rolling, if you hold down the shift key, that's kind of how you pan side to side. And then zooming is just the scroll wheel of your mouse. So that's like, if you can master those actions, you are at least halfway there in terms of using your Blender interface. A lot of the problems between switching CAD systems is that they all have a slightly different system. So just kind of refresh yourself when you open up the file. Just move it around a little bit. No shame in practicing. So you'll see on the left here, we've got some buttons, and these are kind of your tool sets just right out of the box. You've got the lasso selection is kind of your default, and what that means is you can draw a box around stuff and then it will select it, so you're lassoing around. I tend to use the one that's more of a loop, so I can kind of draw an organic shape, and that tends to be useful when you have more like complex geometries and you want to like perfectly select one part of the mesh and not another part. But yeah, and then below that there's the move tool. So let's get into that. So if you click the move tool, it goes into transform. So basically you click that button and then you click the object that you want to move, which should be outlined in orange, and then you can drag each of these handles, right? So what I did before with the light was actually jumping ahead because I'm just going to Control Z. I was jumping ahead because the thing that Blender really leans on, which can be a challenge up front but wonderful to use once you start using it, is key commands. So they lean really heavily on key commands, and if you plan on learning Blender, I highly recommend just trying to pick up some of the key commands, and I'll show you what they are. So instead of clicking this button for move, you can actually hit G for grab, and that will move it basically anywhere. It's not constraining it in any direction. So if I want to move it only in the Y direction, say this green axis, I can hit G, and then I hit the key Y on my keyboard, and it will snap it to that axis. So again, you select your object, and then you can hit G for grab, and then whatever axis you want, you just hit the respective key on your keyboard, and it will allow you to move it snapped along that direction. So the way I'm snapping it right now is I'm just hitting, that's Y, Z key, X key. See what I mean? So even that is kind of annoying, right? Because now I've got to like look down at the keyboard and find the key that I want to move. So the Blender guys have thought of that, and you hit G, and now you can just click and hold your middle mouse button, and it will try to guess which axis you want to snap it to. So I'm still holding down the middle mouse button, and it's kind of guessing which one I want. And once it's got the axis I want, I can actually just let go of the middle mouse button, and it will still stay constrained to the last axis that it was snapped to. So it's kind of an easy way to like move stuff around, right? And beyond objects, that'll work with points and edges and faces once we get into the mesh sides of things. So yeah, that's transform. Any questions before I move on? I know that was a lot to chomp on. See if I can.
Is there a way to snap to the ortho views easily that you know of?
Yep. So your keypad is the way to do that. I don't know if.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it's only the keypad. So like the number pad above your keyboard won't work. It is literally just if you have a keypad on your keyboard. So 1 will do a front view, and then the 7 does a top view, and then a 3 does the right view. And then the keys in between, I haven't totally figured them all out, but you can like snap, or you can like increment to different angles. But if you want your ortho views, so like the perfectly no perspective involved views, that's 7, 1, and 3. And then I think 9, yeah, 9 does it too. You can kind of click around and it'll do some cool stuff. Oh, 5 key, I didn't even know that. 5 key takes perspective, it turns it on and off. That's pretty neat.
Useful.
Yeah. So yeah, when you're in the normal 3D viewport, it's always in perspective unless it's in one of those like orthographic views. But I guess you don't have to do that anymore because you just hit the 5 key, and now there's no more perspective like any CAD system. It's more pretty to look at the perspective view anyway. Yeah, so another thing, while we're just focusing on the viewport, you notice how I'm kind of like rolling around a lot and it's not really in the center anymore. The way you can recenter on what you're concerned about is you click the thing that you're interested in, and then hit the period key on your keyboard, and it will recenter and make that the center of its rotation. So that's kind of nice. If you have a big scene, you can like click one thing and hit the period key, and it'll zoom way up to that thing. So that's kind of nice. Cool. So let's go over to rotation. This is the rotate button. And you can see I've got a couple little things that kind of popped up. There's these little circles, and they are respective of each axis. So you can grab each axis and roll it appropriately. If you don't, it kind of turns into like, I think it's normal to your screen. I never really used that one. And then if you click in the circle, it's like a trackball, so it just moves any which way. Again, I don't know why you would use that, but if it works, you know, why not? Yeah, and the shortcut for that is R for rotate. So if you just hit R on your keyboard, that'll pull up the same tool. And I think, yeah, so if I do this R, and then if you hit R and then X, it's going to do the same thing where it constrains to a certain axis, in this case the X axis, and you can do the Y and the Z. So that's how the rotate tool works. And scale is like the last, there's like a core amount of tools for this, right? Scale is also the S key or this button over here. and it comes with a different gizmo where you can grab different axes and scale them directly in that axis. The one thing that's kind of different with the scale tool is the little squares. So if you grab that square, it's going to grab anything in that plane and scale it equally in the Y and Z direction, if I'm right on that. Yeah, Y and Z. Or, you know, whatever is laying on that plane, it's going to scale it only in those two axes and not in the third one. So, yeah. So those are the three. Below that.
Where did you grab to resize? Mine's doing something else.
So do you get this gizmo on your screen?
Something sort of similar. Yes, I think so. It looks slightly different on a PC, but.
Oh, let me swap over. I don't know if I can see.
I'm looking on the PC and it looks if I change the perspective to where he's from, it looks the same, but yeah, I've got the 3 different colors with boxes.
Yes. Yeah, because like I tried to like grab one of the lines and pull, and it doesn't do anything.
Huh.
And if I select it and hit X, for example, it asked me if I want to delete the object, and I was very confused.
Yeah, so it sounds like you haven't just activated the tool right. So if you look on your upper left, just click like lasso, and then when you look in your just above the tool set, do you see this pull down where it says object mode for me?
Yep.
Yours doesn't say edit mode, does it?
It says object.
Okay, cool. So you should just be able to click your square, like click away first, maybe. Doesn't hurt. And then click the square, and then hit the G key. Oh, sorry, the S key. And then move your mouse. What happens?
Absolutely nothing.
Ooh.
It shows the axis.
Do you want to share your screen? We can diagnose it, or we can do it after too if you want.
Yeah, I don't mind. I've never.
I think this might be
presented in
helpful to
Google Meet.
anybody else that's having an issue. So.
How do you share? Ah, here we go. Share a window.
Oh, I think I'm gonna have to stop. Here we go.
It wants this one. So this is where.
Okay. So if you click the
Do you guys see my blenders?
Okay.
Far so good. And then it just does that.
Object mode. Cube.
I think you just have to click on that circle and hold on the circle and pull it out.
Left click.
Yeah, like left click on the big outer circle and pull on that instead. Yeah, right there. No?
Apparently not.
If you, Shannon, try just doing like the transform, like hit G or something. Okay.
Again.
So that works.
And
if you hit R for rotate, what happens?
Oh my God, under transform, you can actually set the location on the grid back at the origin. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Woot.
Yeah, you can do local transforms. So if your face is like at an angle, you can make that what it aligns all of its transforms to. It's gonna have to be.
Yeah, it actually, I can't rotate the box. It just rotates me around.
Huh.
Maybe try just do a new scene and just, maybe some setting changed. I mean, it shouldn't be, but.
Okay, so you got your thing.
Okay, so now it'll rotate. And it was scale?
S for scale, yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's a
right.
lock, like a lock object option or something that got selected, or maybe a keystroke.
Yeah, I'm sure I clicked something I wasn't supposed to.
That's fine.
It was doing something weird with the playback. Select box is now selected. What select box?
So that is just the default. Here, I'll take back.
Oh, up there. Yeah, please take back.
So Jay was saying something about her scale button being highlighted top left. Right? It seems like we've. All right, we're back to Colin.
Yeah, maybe it was. I don't know. Yeah, like this.
Yeah, the scale works now, so that's cool.
Oh, nice. Maybe it was just a bug or something. Yeah, the scale, these scale buttons, whatever you have selected here, just kind of tells you what tool you have active. I kind of have found to make it simple, I always leave the lasso selected, which is actually, I think the select box is the one that it defaults to. And that way I always know that I just select stuff and that's how it works. But yeah, you can select a different default. So you can click any object and now I've got the transform tool set up. But if you're not wanting it, you can change it, which is kind of nice. Okay, yeah, I think we're ready to get started on the actual tutorial. So I promised you guys a cup, so let's make a cup. We're gonna start by just clicking our default cube that we've gotten to know so well and hit the delete key. And so now we have a blank viewport, which is sad, but we're gonna fill it later. So the first thing is to find a picture. So I'm just gonna go on somewhere on the internet and search mug. That's an interesting first selection. Yeah, just basically look for references. You can choose whatever reference you want. I'm just gonna choose something kind of boring and simple, but I think it'll make a good example. Maybe I'll do that. One thing that's kind of nice to note is if you're looking for a reference of an object, finding something that's branded is actually kind of nice because typically branded things have their own product page and then the products themselves typically have multiple angles. So if you're doing something where you want to have like an exact reference, go find like some branded name and usually it'll be a little more, you'll have more information than just a generic picture. So we've got this. Let's see if this is an actual picture. I'm going to do save as and then wait for my computer. Okay, cool. It says .jpeg, which means it's good. Sometimes random websites will be bad. So we'll just call it mug ref and just save that on my desktop. And the way we get that into Blender is we just go in the scene, you just hold Shift A. So Shift A is how you add basically anything into your scene. So Shift A. It's another one of those remembering things. And so we're going to go down to image and then background. So I'm going to go choose, I think it was in desktop. I got MoGraph. And then you'll see in this Blender file view window, it'll have align to view checked by default. Definitely uncheck that, because when I hit load background image, now it's going to be loaded. I don't know why it's pink. That's interesting. Maybe it's not a picture.
Hey, you are currently sharing your Firefox window and not your Blender window.
Oh. Well, thanks for that. Do a little reset action. Okay. How about now?
That looks like an empty Blender window.
Sweet. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the pictures and find hopefully a better picture. I don't know why that picture didn't work, but no worries. Here's that one. That's kind of cool. This is one thing that sometimes happens. Copy image location, and then go to a different tab and try that. And then I'll do save image as. And this is the problem. Sometimes it'll say .jpeg, and then this says preview.app. I'm not really sure if that means it's a JPEG or not. Let's just call it mode. Actually, I'll rename it MoGraph. Sometimes they're not always pictures, so you like try to bring it in and it doesn't work. So
you can always take a screenshot too, which should work.
True, yeah. So I'm gonna do Shift A. Cool. So since I had that checkbox unchecked in terms of, it's like orient to view is the checkbox, I think. It'll just snap it onto a plane, and it'll be up to us which direction we want to have that plane pointed at. So I'm going to hit R to rotate, and I just clicked the middle mouse button, and it kind of snapped to the, I think that's the x-axis. And then it's kind of like infinitely variable in terms of angle. So to make that not like that, I'm going to hold down Control and then click. So I just clicked once, and you will notice a very crucial thing that is super subtle in Blender is this little pop-up in the lower left. Can you see that? So if you click that triangle, it'll expand, and this is your one chance to actually modify whatever you've done. So if I want it to be perfectly 90 degrees, I'm going to do 90, enter, and you can choose your axis too. And then as soon as I click away, it's forever like that. There's no box I can go back to edit it again like that. If you want to change the angle, now I got to select it and then do rotate and then do it all over again. So just that's kind of one thing that you have to get used to with this type of modeling, like using clay. When you make a change, it's like that. And if you want to go back, you just do Control Z, or hopefully you've saved an earlier version that you can go back to that version. So, all right. So I'm going to look at
Could you repeat that 90-bit again?
Yeah. So to rotate this, I'm just going to hit R for rotate. And then I was just holding down on the middle, or holding down the middle mouse button until I got the axis I want. And see how this is like, how this is like rotating. And then I'm just kind of holding down the axis, the middle mouse button until I get the axis I want. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you can always hit R and then just hit a key on the keyboard, X, Y, or Z, and it will rotate about each respective axis. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was where you got to type in 90. I didn't see how you got that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so if I do R and then a rotation, so let's say I just go to some random location, this will just automatically pop up. And by default, if it's your first time using the program, it won't even be expanded. It'll just feel like this little thing that you're like, oh, that's probably nothing. That's like super important. So, so yeah, if you hit rotate and you do rotate and you see this thing pop up, that's your chance to go in and go like, oh no, I actually want 38 degrees. And then you can hit enter.
I'm sorry, so you control click and, or is it control R? You select it. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the same thing and I got behind.
No problem. So if you have the picture in your viewport, you can just hit R for rotate and it should start rotating, right?
Yep.
And then if I want to rotate it about like a certain axis, like the x-axis here, I can just do that. And all the control key did was kind of snap it to like smaller increments. So, or sorry, larger increments. So if you want,
and so when you stop, you get that little box at the bottom, and that is your only chance. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. It's one of the quirks. But yeah, so now that we've got it perfectly on that plane, I'm going to go into the front view by hitting the 1 key on my keypad, and then I'm going to select it and hit the G key for grab. And I'm just going to kind of move it so that the base of it is kind of in the center-ish, as close as I can get it, right? Yeah, and actually, while I'm at it, I know this is recorded, but if you guys want this exact picture, I'm going to put this in the chat link.
Huh.
So if you want it, that's the picture I used. So yeah, now we have our reference picture nicely set up on the plane. And we need geometry we need to start making geometry. The way Blender works is it starts with what are called primitives. So rather than drawing a shape and extruding it like other CAD systems, Blender works by starting with something, and you have a choice of what those something things are. So if you do Shift A, like we do to add anything, I'm just going to go to Mesh, and then these are your primitives that you can choose between. So we've got a plane, which is just a square, and then cube, circle, UV sphere. It gets a little weird. And then cylinder might be kind of a good option. Cone or torus. Torus is, by the way, what I used to start the donut. So it's not as hard as it seems. But yeah, so for this, to explain some functions that you're going to use a lot, I'm just going to choose circle. So now I've got just a circle around the bottom. And it's actually, amazingly, I did not plan it to be like that, but it's sort of lined up with the cup. I'm going to hit S to scale it a little bit up, but generally, that looks pretty good. I just hit the 1 key to go into the front view again, and I'm just going to kind of like get my picture nice and lined up there. All right, so I've got my circle, and the circle is just like an edge. It has no filling. There's no surface. So we're going to fix that. So far, everything that we've done in Blender has been in what's called object mode. And that is for kind of what we've been doing. It's like scenes, and if you just need to like squash the whole object, that's how you do that. But we're going to go into a little more detail of a mode, oriented mode, called edit mode. So if you hit the tab key, that's kind of how you select between those two modes. Otherwise, you can go in your upper left here, and there's object, edit, sculpt, you know, all these different things that you don't need to worry about right now. We're just selecting in between object and edit. And what that does is instead of selecting the whole circle, now I can just select parts of the circle. So I can select all these vertices, all these points around the circle, and if I hit my G key now, I'm only going to move that part of the circle. Does that make sense? So within this type of modeling, there's 3 modes. So there's points or vertex, there's edge mode, and then there's face mode. And those are to select those corresponding pieces of geometry. So I'm going to hit edge mode, and by clicking on the circle, you'll notice I only get 1 edge. So I'm going to hit A for all, and that will select all of my things. That works for everything, faces, edges, and points. If you hit A, it just selects everything in that object. So we hit A for all, and then I'm going to hit E for extrude, or otherwise, if you go over to the left here, there's extrude region. So I'm gonna do an extrude, and it just immediately pulls this out. And because I haven't selected a direction, it's just kind of going wherever. So I'm gonna hold down the middle mouse button, just like everything else, and it constrains it to a direction. So I let go, and it's in that direction now. Whenever I drag, I'm gonna hit the 1 key. Oh, I have to. Oh, okay. I guess hit 1 before you do the tool. And then drag that up, and now we are starting to look like a cup. Thank you. Yeah, so let's give it a little bit of taper. So I'm gonna, now that I've got this there, I'm just gonna hit S for scale, and now I can scale that orange circle. Is this, am I leaving anybody behind with this?
I'm super lost.
Okay. Tell me your problems.
I can't get my circle to extrude up.
Okay. So are you in edit mode?
Yes, I am in edit mode, and I am in that middle of the 3 modes. I have a circle. It is perpendicular to, in multiple dimensions, my picture.
Cool.
And I can get the extrude thing. It's just not going on the axis that I want it to.
Okay. So it's kind of doing this.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the way we constrain it is we just middle mouse click, and it should snap to a axis. If it doesn't snap to the right axis, you can always just middle mouse click. Is that working for you?
No.
So the alternative, if you don't want to do the middle mouse click thing, again, is you can just hit the Z key, and it will constrain it to the Z axis. Does that work?
What if you've already extruded it, but it's sort of at an angle?
Then I would Control Z and do it again. So I'll do E. I'll just do what you're saying. I've got E, right? It's not quite perfect because it wasn't constrained. I would just start over. Control Z, and then hit E again, and then hit the Z key on my keyboard, and now it's perfectly straight. Does that work?
Uh-huh.
Sweet. So yeah, once the top edge is up there, we're just gonna hit, S for scale, and then drag it out a little bit. The cool thing about having these keyboard shortcuts, I know it's a lot at first, but you'll notice, like I just did it by accident. You start memorizing these keys, and they become kind of second nature after you do it enough. So it is worth it. It's just a pain up front, which is why I think a lot of people are turned off by Blender, because it is rather intensive to start learning. So that the curve of difficulty is like a big hump, and then it.
Okay, probably
I
stupid.
figured out what I was having problem with. It was in the wrong extrude mode.
Now now that we have all of these lovely, like this, I have this cylinder. How do I select it in its entirety just to move it to the other side of the image? Because it only wants to select the faces that are facing me when I draw a
Yes.
marquee around it.
So if you just want to move the whole thing wholesale and you don't care about moving parts of it, I would hit your tab key and you would go into your object mode again. Which
Okay,
is where you
got
started.
it.
And then you
Gotcha.
can,
Look at that.
bada
Magical.
boom. But well, anyway, I'll get to that.
Okay.
All right.
Duly
So
noted.
yeah, I'm trying to avoid information overload because this is like it fills you up very quickly. All right, so now I've got a cylinder. It has no bottom and no top, but it more or less looks like a cup. So the way we add a bottom to it is I'm just gonna, in edit mode, in edge select mode, I'm just gonna click one of the edges, and as I click it, I'm gonna hold down the Alt key. So if I hold down Alt and click that edge, it will select whatever loops are attached to that edge. So the whole thing should just, the whole loop should turn orange. And then to fill that bottom in, I'm actually just going to hit F on my keyboard for fill. So now I've got a bottom on my cup. Pretty sweet. So now that we've got a bottom on our cup and sides, we can actually go and add the handle. Actually, before that, let's add some thickness to it because it's like paper thin right now, so it wouldn't 3D print.
Can I ask one question before you do that? How did you get the flare
What flare?
in the cup?
Like taper.
The taper, pardon.
Oh, yeah. I just took, okay, so you're in edit mode?
Yes.
You can either select them with a box from like that, or hold the Alt key and click one of the edges and you'll select all of them, right? And then I just hit the S key for scale and I can scale.
Got it. Okay.
Right. All right, so I'm going to go into the front view. I don't know why I was doing front view. Yeah, don't worry about that. So we've got a cup that's got a side and bottom, but it has no thickness right now, right? We just drew a circle and we extruded it up. So a circle extruded up is going to have no thickness. It's just a surface. So we're going to go over to the right, and I'm going to introduce you to a new little panel. These little buttons here all are attached to different panels. So there's a lot of little options. It's generally where you find like options and properties and stuff like that. If you're changing the paint color, it'll be in there somewhere. So we're going to look for the one that is the blue wrench, and that is the Modifier panel. And the reason we're going to do that is we're going to hit Add Modifier, and then when you click Add Modifier, you've got this huge panel with all sorts of different things you can do. And basically, it's taking, this panel is all functions that are applied to your object. So they don't do anything destructive, but they add on layers of like operations, which is really useful. So I'm going to go to solidify in this case. And when I do solidify, I'm going to get this panel that pops up. And one of them is thickness. So I'm just going to, you can notice if I drag this out, it starts adding thickness, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to go, let's say add. The units are kind of weird by default. They're in meters. You can change that to millimeters. But a meter is just
biggest cup ever.
Yeah. A meter is just 1,000 millimeters. So if I just go 0.00, I don't know, 3, I'll get a 3 millimeter thick wall thickness. In this case, that doesn't look right because I didn't start with a scaled object. which is something I probably should have done, but it's fine. You can just change it to some thickness that looks about right.
So, Colin, I got to the blue wrench, and then I added the modifier for solidify, and then I missed a step as far as what happens after that.
Okay, so you're in edit mode, right?
Yeah, I'm in edit mode, and I've got the top rim selected in orange.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you don't need that necessarily, but you can just go to, if you have it already up there and it's not working, you can just hit the little X in the upper right of your solidify thing, and it'll go away.
Okay.
So you can just X out of that and start over. So we're going to X out, go to add modifier, solidify.
Oh, okay. It says it cannot be applied in edit mode, but sorry.
No.
Oh,
you're in.
keep messing around. It could be my selection.
Oh yeah. Well, did you have the edge selected maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I do that, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you can keep going. I'll mess around.
Sometimes, just a heads up too, Blender is an open source code. So since it's free, it's a collaborative effort by a bunch of people, and it's somewhat buggy. Sometimes there will be things that happen that you can't really explain, and the solution is to just delete it or start over and try it again. And usually the problem is resolved. It's a pretty good piece of code, but they're making so many changes that sometimes it can be a little buggy. So I'm going to go and add some thickness to my cup. It looks decent to me. Seems like a good thickness. And we can scale the whole thing up and down later to be the size that we want it to be. So I'm just kind of focusing on the proportions and the shape, and that's kind of all I care about right now. So now that that's done, this modifier is just being applied to a piece of geometry. And the cool thing about that is if I go, like, let's say I go here, and I'm going to just do some stuff that I'm not going to explain for a second. So I'm just going to like scale that up. And what's cool about having this modifier here is I just totally changed the shape of the cup, right? And I only selected the outside of it and scaled it. But because it's being thickened by this modifier, it's copying that motion and thickening in that direction. Does that make sense?
So this is going to create a uniform thickness based on the exterior shell, essentially,
Bingo.
no matter how you change it.
Right. So
oh my God, that's so nice.
Yeah. So the kind of cool thing about that is you can have a uniform thickness for whatever shape you're messing around with. And then when you decide you like it, you can hit apply, and then in edit mode. You can hit apply, and now I've committed. Now I've got, if I go back into edit mode, and if I say I change this curve and I scale it, the inside won't change. Does that make sense? You can control when you're like committing changes, if that makes any sense.
Right. Huh.
So, okay, let's get back to what we were doing. We've got our solidify. I'm just going to add some thickness till it looks about right. Cool. Now I've got it. And I'm going to apply this because we're going to add a handle. And I don't want to, for the reason that I just explained, I don't want to like start stretching out a handle and it's going to add like thickness inside of the handle because it's applying it to whatever that geometry is. So I'm just going to hit apply. And now when I go back into my object and I hit tab for edit mode, if I do anything here, it's not going to like make a hole inside here as I pull the handle out, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's get to, oops. let's get to
Can you
making the
just do that last thing one more time? How you make it like a thing
Sure.
of its own?
Yeah, so let's demo. Okay, so now if I go into here, right, I've got the modifier in here active.
Yep.
And if I'm just gonna jump ahead and show you what happens. If I try to make a handle, it's a good heads up for like how we're gonna do this. Okay, so I've made the thing, right? It's starting to be a handle. Look what happens inside here. So yeah. It's actually hollow. Let's get a better visual here. It's actually hollow in there because it's still actively thickening everything. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And if I like delete this face here, you're gonna see it's made this like thickened handle. Is that like setting in? So that's what we want to avoid. We're going to make a handle and we don't want it to be like hollow inside the handle. So the way you do that is I've got this modifier to thicken the surface and I just hit apply. I'm in object mode. I hit apply and now when I go to do it, if I hit extrude, there's no hole.
How did you create the segments or add the?
Oh yeah, I'll go back. Okay, so let's back up. So now we've got our modifier and we hit apply. And actually, JR, I think this may have been the problem you were having. You were trying to apply the modifier, maybe?
Yep, that's exactly what I was trying to do. I just saw the word apply and figured that's what it was. Yep.
Yeah, and it's like, it's kind of tricky because when you see like apply, you're like, oh, of course I want to apply it. And this is like an irreversible action. So you go into object mode and then you can hit apply. So they just make that, I don't know, so that you don't mess around with it while it's being applied. I don't really get it. Anyway, so we can go back into edit mode by hitting the tab key. And now we can start adding the stuff for the handle. So the problem with poly modeling and like Blender and any kind of modeling like this, like if you've used ZBrush or Sculptress, it's also like this. If you don't have polygons, you don't have the ability to make any kind of definition, right? So if I tried to like, let's say I wanted to make a handle there, there's like, I can click here, but I only click the entire thing. And if I drag that out, it's just gonna move like side of the cup. So I don't want that. I only want to pull out part of it. And the way that you do that is you add geometry. And the way we're gonna add geometry is by holding Control R for, I think it's for slice. Some of the acronyms don't really make sense.
Ha! Oh, and you can choose where it goes. Sweet.
Yeah, so the tool, the loop slice tool, I think that's what it's called, is pretty, it's pretty informative. So you'll hit Control R, and if you hover over it, it'll try to like show you, okay, I'm gonna make a slice here, I'm gonna make a slice here. So we're just gonna hold it around the middle. You're gonna click once, and now it's gonna say, okay, I know I wanna be here, but where do you want me to be? So you drag your mouse until, let's go with the top of the handle, so like somewhere around there. And now we've got enough geometry to pull out like a smaller section, right? So I can pull this, and that'll like pull. Now instead of pulling the whole side out, I pull only that section. So we're just gonna keep adding slices until we have enough for the whole handle. So I'll do Control R again.
Well, can't you just adjust the number of cuts up?
Yeah, you can, but we're trying to choose exactly where they go.
Oh, okay.
Generally, like, it's good practice generally with this type of modeling to only add geometry where you absolutely need it, because otherwise stuff starts to get really busy and you actually see it when you render. Things will get kind of like ripply and it doesn't look as good sometimes. Not all the time, but it's just one of those things. You just try to add as little geometry as possible. So I'm going to do one now for the top of the handle, and then one more for the bottom of the handle. Cool. So you can see here this loop cut and slide tool pops up. This is where you can do more things that you can do them once and then you click away and they're gone forever. So yeah, so let's start actually pulling the handle out. So I'm going to go into face mode. And a shortcut, by the way, for toggling in between vertex, edge, and face is the number 1, 2, and 3 above your letters of your keyboard, not the keypad, the numbers on your keyboard. So 3 gets you to face mode, 1 gets you to vertex mode, and 2 gets you to edge mode. So I'm going to go to 3. I'm going to select 2 here, and then this is
and you held shift to select both, right?
Yeah, yes, thank you. Just hold down shift key and you can select as many as you want. So I'm just going to select 2 here. And there's a new button called E for extrude. Actually, we did use that, I think, didn't we? Well, anyway, hold down E for extrude, and it will drag it normal to the surface. So if it's at an angle like this one is, it drags it at an angle away from that. So it's kind of offsetting, I guess is the best way to describe it. So now we've got that. I'm going to Control Z and do it again because I didn't want it to be that thick. Okay. I'm going to do it one more time. And then click, and I'm just going to start. I'm going to use G for grab. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to get into my front view. I'm going to use G for grab and just start aligning things. So I'm going to go into edge mode. This is where you can see it starts to get really advantageous to have key commands because it's a lot of, you're doing these commands a lot. And go back into face mode. Select these guys and extrude them out. Something like that. All right. So you may notice this thing is really blocky. There's a thing that we can do to fix that, and it's another modifier. If you go over to your modifier panel again, the blue wrench, and then add modifier, this is probably the single most used modifier. It's called Subdivision Surface. So you're going to click that, and what it does is it applies a smoothing factor that's really nice because it makes everything look nice and smooth to your model. So one thing I would recommend you click right off the bat is those 3 little dots on the top. It makes your mesh apply to the smoothness so you can kind of see it easier. Do you see that? And the way you can kind of deactivate it is you can hit the little, it looks like a TV or a computer monitor, and it'll turn it on and off. So if you want to like look at it, you can either hit that button, or what I sometimes do is just hit the tab key, and now I'm looking at it without any wireframe on it. Yeah, so even when it's like this, it's still a little bit blocky, right? So there's a couple things we can do. We can add some detail. So under subdivisions, you can say render and viewport. And render will only apply that detail during render time. So you can add a ton of render smoothing because it usually slows things down only for render time. Or you can, in viewport mode, you can turn that detail up. This is a really simple object, so I'm just going to do render 3, viewport 3. That's probably pretty good. Yeah, now that we've got that, let's start working on the bottom of our mug. So now that it's smooth, I'm going to go back into face mode, select those guys, hit E for extrude again, and now check that out. Instead of it being just like a big rectangle that's offset, it's like kind of a blob. And the blobs get more definition with the more geometry you add. So I'm going to do this. One quick tip in terms of moving, like, see, I was just about to move that. And since I'm at an angle, it's just going to move it normal to my screen, which I don't want. I want it to be aligned with the, like this, that view, right? Because I want the handle to be straight. So the way you do that is if I hold, or if I click G to move this thing, if you know the direction that you're normal to, so in this case, Y is the green axis, and I don't want it to move in the Y direction, you can hit, after you hit the G command, you hit Shift Y, and you'll see it flashes this other, like that crosshatch, the blue and the red. And what that's telling me is it's only moving in those two directions, so on that plane. Does that make sense? And all of that was just to move it up a little bit. So I'm just gonna move that. Okay, and I wanna see what so this is kind of big, right? It's way too big. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna turn wireframe back off and kind of evaluate. I'm going to Control Z that, and I'm going to bring that down. And let's see how it looks in smooth view. Okay. Okay, so let's do one more. I've got one more trick up my sleeve that I want to show you. Okay, and crucially, I'm going to rotate. Oops. You can see I'm not totally fluent in this one either. Do that, and then I'm going to rotate it. Sort of like that. I'm going to scale it in the Z direction. Oops. SZ, scale it. Cool. And then this one is kind of big too, so I'm going to do that. One cool thing in terms of selection, I'm just feeding you a little more factoids the more we go. I'm just going to click both of these, and from there I can do Control and then the plus sign on your keypad, and it will just grow your selection in all directions. So that lets me select like everything around that front face. And the reason I did that is because I just want to scale it all down a little bit. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it down there too. Scale it, but I'm going to scale this one in the right direction. Ooh, yeah, here's a good point. So since I've been messing around so much, I added too many loops. So you can see it's like I scaled one, but the other one is still around. That's fine. I'm just going to go to my edge mode, select the edge with the Alt key, and then either, I think, yeah, if I just hit delete, it does the same thing as the X key. X is like delete. I don't know why they chose X key for delete things, but I'm just going to hit dissolve edges. So dissolve edge makes that go away. So now I've got the beginning and the end of my handle. How do I connect them? the way we can connect them is go into face mode, and there's many ways of doing this, but this is just a cool way that I like to play with. I'm going to use my shift key and select all the faces on the end of each side of the handle, and then I'm just going to right click and then hit bridge faces. And it looks super weird because I just connected some stuff, but this is where the properties panel in the lower left is like really important because it allows you to put all these parameters. Under number of cuts, it says 0. I'm gonna just add a bunch and look what happens. So now I've got like a bunch of loops if I want them. And then there's, I think it's blend. Yeah, you can do blend path or blend surface. I'm not totally sure what the difference is, but they're very similar. And then you can choose like a sharp transition or smooth transition, and then apply that factor. If you just pull around these factors and parameters, you'll have fun. There's like lots of little things you can mess around with. So yeah, I'm gonna go with something pretty simple just for the case of being simple. I'm gonna hit the 1 key so that I get a front view. And this is close, which is pretty much what I want. So I'm gonna click away because when I turn my smoothing modifier back on, it's like close, but I kind of want to mess around with it, right? So the way I'm gonna do that is just go to my edge mode, select whatever edge I want to move, and then kind of move it to tailor it. I'm going to scale it up a little bit. I'm going to grab the next one, scale that guy up a little bit, move it. So this is where Blender is very much a sculpting kind of software. It's not really, we're clearly not doing engineering right now. But the cool thing is it will allow you to make something that you can 3D print.
Real quick, I had a question. How'd you connect those two pieces back together again?
Yeah, so just gonna go back. All right, so I was like here. Actually, I'm gonna turn off the modifier here. So I was like that, right? Mm-hmm. The way that you access that is just right click, and then it'll say bridge faces.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's a way. There's a way in the menus to find that.
Got it.
You'll have to Google it. I don't know that off the top of my head. But yeah, so bridge faces does it, and then you can choose in there. Usually, like number of cuts, you need like more than 0, unless you just need a single face. Yeah, so I'm going to do that. And go to edge mode and move stuff around. Oh yeah, actually, while I was playing around with this earlier today to make sure I knew what I was talking about. And if you do bridge faces, kind of a cool, easy way to like make this your own is twist. So you can add twist, and it will like automatically twist it as it's bridging it, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to add more cuts so it's got a little more geometry there. Isn't that sweet? And
I've created a monstrosity.
I want to see everybody's monstrosity when we're.
It's like the thing you would give to the house guest you hate.
Drink out of the.
Mine was so horrifying that it crashed Blender and is trying to take my computer with it.
Well done.
Awesome.
Granted, I probably had way too many windows open as this tutorial's been going along, and every time the screen locks up, I close more browser windows, and it's like, let me close Excel, let me close.
Yeah,
these vertices are like eating themselves. It's like a melee.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to watch if it's something you want to 3D print.
I do not.
Okay. Don't worry about it.
Well, not this, at least.
Yeah.
This should never actually
the
exist.
seventh cup that isn't terrible. What do we need to look out for?
So it's all about normals. Basically, when you go to bring it into your slicer software, it's trying to figure out where's the inside and where's the outside, right? But if your insides are like meshing through your outsides, it's just going to be like, I don't know, man. So yeah, you just have to, like, if it's a twist or something like that, you need to add lots of geometry so that you don't have just things going through each other. Does that make sense?
I think that my before it crashed was a perfect example of what not to do. So,
well, perfect. You can teach all of us.
no, I don't even know how it happened. I extruded the cylinder and it wound up with just like tangled and full of colored pixels.
Beautiful.
I have no idea how I did it.
I think I forgot to apply the modifier for thickening. So I'm creating, I didn't notice, but the interior is trying to become the exterior. Look at that. Look at that.
Yep.
So, Colin, is it easy to do a render of this? Or do we have to apply like a surface description?
No. So yeah, actually, I didn't realize
I don't want
what
to get
time it
ahead
is.
if that's what it is. I'm just kind of, we got our cup. I'm curious if I can look at it in beautiful 3D.
Yeah. No, I'll take you there. Let's do it. So this reference picture is no longer important, right? So I'm just gonna go and
That ship has sailed. Looks for me.
we're way past that right now. So just go to your every one of the things in the scene is in the upper right here. So I've got a camera, a circle, which is what the cup started out as, and then it says empty for me for some reason. But if you see this picture icon, that means it's a reference. So you can just hit the eyeball and it goes away. So now if I zoom out, I've got my cup and nothing else. So we can look at it in 3D. Yeah, let's just do it. Let's see how it looks. So I'm going to click this camera, hit the tab key so that you're in object mode. I'm going to click the camera so that's selected. And then I'm going to become the camera by hitting 0 on the keyboard. And it zooms into, now I'm seeing what the camera is seeing. And there is a button that I want to make sure everybody clicks. If you hit the N key, as in Nancy, and then go down to View, so you see these like 3 tabs. You go down to View. You only have to do this once. This is just to start up using Blender. Hit Lock Camera to View. So what that does is now when I like move around, the camera is moving with me. The old way was to like separate it, so you could like move around and then hit the 0 key, and that's what it did. It was like super annoying. So just click Lock Camera to View, and then now when you're in camera mode by hitting the 0 key on your keypad, you're like literally moving the camera. Does that make sense? And to preview the render, hold down the Z key. Z is in zebra. And if you hold down the Z key and drag up, you can go to rendered. So it changes the rendering or the viewport mode you're in. There's lots of modes. And it kind of looks faceted, and I realized I forgot to do something here. So I'm just gonna select my cup. You see how it's like little micro facets? Can you see that through the screen? Can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So it's like kind of smooth, but not great. So the way you take care of that is right click. After you select it, right click it and do Shade Smooth. And that will finish making it look awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
So I seem to have lost my light.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I must have deleted it when I was deleting other things.
Okay.
I imagine I can add it by hitting, what was it, A, and then light, and then point.
Yep, Shift A, and then, yeah, light, and, yeah, you can do point, you can do, yeah, just do point.
Yep.
I have my light pointing away from the model because that's the thing to do.
Huh, it's a point, so I'm really curious how you did that.
I got skills, man. I got skills.
But so if you grab, we're in object mode, and if I zoom out until I can actually see the light, can you do that?
Yes.
So I'm just gonna grab it, and now I'm gonna hit G for grab, and I'm gonna move it around. And since for this, I don't wanna move it like in elevation, so I'm gonna do Shift Z, because I don't want it to move out of that plane. Now I can kind of move it around, and it's like moving along the XY plane without going up or down. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So now it's backlit instead of
So
relative to or it's left lit instead of right lit relative to the camera.
okay, so can you click the light and then move it over?
Yeah, it's moved.
You sound so disappointed.
I'm not disappointed. I'm more like kind of more than mildly embarrassed. But you know what? It's mine, and I'm gonna own it.
There you go.
World's ugliest cup.
There you go. If you want like individual help, I'm happy to, like, anytime, not just tonight. Just send me like a thing on Slack, and I'll help you with it.
Can we if you're done? I don't know if you're done, Colin, but can we see? Oh, because you haven't rendered it yet, have you, or you have?
Yeah, this is just a preview. So the actual render is, if I go to 0, this is exactly what I want my render to look like. And then the way I really do the render is I go up to the menu, and there's render image, or you can hit F12, render image. So you hit render image, and it thinks about it for a little while, and it's gray because I didn't get to apply any paint to it, which we can do. But you do have a render. So if you want, you can, without any materials applied or anything, you can just go render image, and it will actually think about it. And then I've got my picture right here. And from there, you can do, is it image and save as, and that's how you get your picture out of there. So I can save as, like that. So I'm not done yet. So I'm just gonna go and add a material real quick. This is the last step for tonight. I know I'm overboard.
No, it's been great.
So I'm gonna click my cup and then hit this like beach ball thing, the red beach ball on the lower right. And then I'm gonna hit new. So this is your materials panel, if you couldn't guess already. And where it says material 1 next to this little beach ball, I'm just gonna rename it because it's good practice to do it. Let's call it mug. And then where it says base color down here, and it's got a white thing, I'm just gonna click it, and then it's gonna pull up this color palette, drag it to whatever color you want. I'm gonna do like a blue thing. And then if you want it darker, there's like a white to black fader. So you can do that. And then if you want to get a little more fancy with it without too much effort, I'm going to get out of the camera view. I'm going to do real quick a Shift A plane. And now I'm going to do, I've got this plane. I'm going to scale it out like so. I'm going to pull it like way out. Now I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to select probably these far edges here. And I'm going to hit E for extrude. I'm going to constrain it to the Z-axis. And boom, I've got a photo booth.
Oh.
So I can hit O again like that. And so now I can reset my scene, my beautiful shadow, and then hit F12.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Oh.
And you can see how easy, like you can totally go down the rabbit hole with this. I can go and say, oh, I want these all to be nicely beveled. So there's a tool over here called Bevel, and you can drag it out like so. Maybe add more segments. Oops.
How do you make the camera view again? Like the view that you're looking at, but then make it the camera?
Oh, if you go over and you hit N as in Nancy, so it pulls up that like control panel in the upper right,
Yep.
this one right here. So there, it pulls up item first. Go down to view, and then it's going to say lock camera to view, and that's what you want to check.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool.
So now it's just going to render whatever I'm looking at, basically.
Whenever you're in the camera view by hitting the O key on your keypad. Yes. So I'm going to do that, and maybe I'll add a bunch of segments. Boom. So now I can go back into this view. And yeah, let's do another render. There we go.
So good.
So, and yeah, as you can see, like this is very primitive, but you can add textures. You can make things look like wood if you want. Yeah, the sky's the limit, really. And this is, oh, sorry.
Oh, I know it's totally out of the scope of this one,
Yeah.
but I played with an earlier. This is way better than I remember Blender being. But one
Yeah.
of the things that really blew me away was the simulations. So I did like a cup, and then I would do like liquid, and then I just have like the liquid fall into the cup, and it would spill, or you could turn like the cup into smoke, and it would just like it would. You could do all these sorts of things, and it's just like applying those. It's like applying those modifiers, and it takes a while to render. But I don't know if you speak to that, because I think it's like once you have this, you can actually start doing really cool things pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I would love to, like, especially with Blender, since it's so, I mean, it's free, so it's totally accessible. I would love to get into that. That's called a fluid simulation, and I'm so pumped about that. I haven't even had a chance to get into it, so I would love to do like a really honest, let's learn this together, because I haven't touched it yet. But so to respond to your earlier thing, like this is way easier to use than I remember. There was a very drastic step in version 2.8, which happened, I think, I want to say like a year ago. And that's actually what put this program back on the map for me, because before I had used it and it was such like a kludge of like different things and tiny little buttons that I was like, okay, that's way too much to learn. And I never learned it. But now it's actually usable. Like it's still hard because there's a lot of buttons. It's like being in a studio sound room and you've got like all the knobs and buttons for the audio controls. Like there are so many buttons to this thing, but that's because it's extremely powerful. So
yeah, it's like sitting at the dash of the space shuttle. Like, oh God.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, okay, so to turn the headlights on.
Yes.
But yeah.
So I'd love to also see other people's results if they want to share their screen and show their cup, just to see where other
Julia,
people
will you
landed.
Oh,
Okay. All right.
So I'll do mine to set a good example.
Oh, no. Well, it's good because it can only go downhill when I.
Hey, at
So
least
I'm doing
yours
this
was able
before
to
it's
finish.
rendered. So here's mine with the camera in the little box, but somehow I ended with this. I tried to get ahead of Colin and do my handle like manually, and then when I bridged it, it made this funny little bridge. So this is like a pinky.
Okay.
A pinky one.
I like it. It's very film noir.
Yeah. And my lighting, I think I didn't get the scale. I didn't bother to scale it. So my lights just are these little, I had to add a bunch to even see my
Oh
my
yeah,
cup.
because your scene is huge, right?
Yeah, I don't know how to know how big things are. So I just threw it in there.
Yeah. So
That's
if you go, you see where it says view in the upper right. If you click item in the upper right, the other right.
oh yeah, yep.
Uh,
Click item.
yeah, go up. It's like the tabs that control that panel.
Oh, item, I see. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So you can see on the bottom there it says dimensions. So you're
Yeah, meters.
meters tall.
Oh,
It's a massive cup.
bigger than a school
Wow.
bus.
Totally Vegas. I love it.
Yeah.
That's one thing that is kind of tough, and it's also freeing about Blender and this type of modeling software is like, yeah, there's dimensions, and there didn't used to be dimensions, by the way. So this was like totally an irrelevant program for me. But you don't have to really pay attention to how big stuff is. It's not going to slow you down. Whereas with like Fusion 360 or any CAD system, you generally kind of have to know how big things are. This is more like if you had a pad of paper and you wanted to draw, except it's in 3D. So
yeah. So I should click that and scale it down. Well, I'll play around with it and get it scaled down, and maybe I need to get out of this thing.
yeah, I would
Yeah,
just
so let's see somebody else's cup.
Okay. All right. Here you go.
and nobody has
So.
to show their thing, just to be clear.
So it's playing, I think it's playing the circle game. Like it's going to make us look and then punch us in the arm, you know, like that kind of thing. And then, so I'll show you, I'll give you the tour. See, there's this little cluster. I'm not truly certain what's happening there, but I know it would probably like straight up murder a 3D printer if I tried
It looks
doing
like an
that.
arm or something. It looks like
I know, right?
Very organic.
And then, continuing to the inside, this is where it all went wrong, and I didn't notice. I thought I had applied, but apparently not. So there you go.
It looks like a Salvador Dali.
If only. I feel like he was doing it on purpose, though. But just remember, kids, this cautionary tale. There you go.
Cool. Anybody else up for embarrassment?
How do you share the screen?
Oh, if you go to the bottom right,
and just say present now.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, and you can do your desktop, and then it will like do a pop up, and then you have to confirm.
Okay.
it is. It does look like organic, like tendons and muscles and stuff. Ooh,
Yeah, I like the lighting.
Very nice.
Color gel lighting.
Disco.
Good. Yeah. Yes,
Brown goes
exactly.
Yeah.
that's
I put
honestly
some club lighting in there for this mug, you know,
yeah, where's the technique?
in case you want coffee at the club. Yeah, all I did was just like added in like 2 lights and just gave them color, basically.
Yeah, so that's actually a great point. So if you go into under in the upper right, there's like the lights or the light that's in your scene. If you only have one, you can just click that, and then you go down to properties on the lower right, and you can choose the color, temperature, and the power. So you can turn it up or down. Oh yeah.
That is. It's like, one thing I was searching for, because I'm doing some community projects that involve lighting, and we're using DMX control.
Okay.
And I would have thought it would be awesome to use Blender to like be able to simulate the DMX control. So I was trying to find a plugin where I could give it commands, stream it commands, and then watch it be rendered in the software. And I found some people talking about doing something similar, but then I couldn't figure out what the result was. So, anyways, just if you're
I would love to get into the back end of it. I'm just starting to learn like coding and Python and that kind of thing. And I know there's a lot of like people that are doing that kind of stuff. It's open source, so you can mess around with it. I've got another version of Blender that I won't pull up because it just takes too long. But you can like entirely customize Blender. Like, you know how when we first pulled up Blender, there's like the thing with the cube. There's a guy that I follow on YouTube. His name is Heavy Poly. He's an incredible 3D artist, and he's worked at like Sony and a bunch of big names. But he's got an entirely customized version of Blender that he's put out there, and you pull it up and it doesn't look like Blender anymore. But it can do all these amazing things that he's customized for like his exact use. So if you're interested, you can do that kind of stuff. So I bet there's a way, JR, to like output, talk to, basically you have to talk to a color channel in a material or to a light channel, and you would just output to a file, and then you would just change the value of the file.
Well, from a like architectural lighting, you could have the whole thing and then really show people what that display would be like and get a real rendered view. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Were there any other cups that people had to show off? Nice lamp, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah. That's sweet, man.
When he was talking about the twist command, that's what I did for like the stem there. So that's super helpful. Anyways.
Very nice. Any other cups? Oh, yeah, Heavy Poly. I actually did a tutorial. He's got a whole course that I may one day when I feel like just dropping a bunch of cash. He has like a full course if you want to do like a structured course. But Heavy Poly is just...
Well, and for folks in New Haven or Brantford, the libraries both have programs that anybody who's a library card holder has free access to Lynda. And you log in with your library card. And I talked to them, and you can get your library card remotely now, but you have to show that you're in one of those towns. Other towns may as well have it, so you need to ask your library. But there's a bunch of Blender courses on there. So that's another way to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, let me, if I can show something real quick.
Amen.
Just because it's another course, kind of like the donut, that is, I don't know if I recommend it, but it's just really cool. The reason I don't recommend it is because it's such a different version of Blender that it's like disorienting. So if you don't have a solid foundation, I don't recommend jumping into this because it's like it's too different. But you can see like he's more about like just incredible photorealism and detail. So we were getting like the color effects of the soy sauce, and we worked a lot on like the lighting. I can actually just pull up the scene.
So you worked with this person?
No. I just mean like from the tutorial. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So I wonder if I can. I think I gotta go to his version of Blender. Open that one up. So I said I wouldn't, but you guys seem interested, so I'll show it. This is what Blender looks like from Heavy Poly.
I think my mind just broke a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that like code it's revealing on the side? It's hard to...
That's actually just like notation to keep to help you remember like all the shortcuts, because like you know how there's shortcuts anyway, he like hijacked them and made his own, and they're great, but it's like a whole different level of shortcuts. So, but yeah, this is like generally what a scene like to make that looks like. I've got a lot of light panels, so I'm if I go to rendered, my computer is not very fast with this stuff. So this is the pre-render, so it's not going to look perfect. But I've got these light panels that are projecting onto this background. And then like the mug that somebody had earlier, there's a yellow light that helps give some depth to like the yellowness of the soy sauce liquid itself. See in the background, it's like tinted a little bit. So it's just fun if you're into like rendering and photography or sculpting or whatever.
And this is all ray tracing, right? Is that?
Yeah. So this is like real. That's like a whole topic, really. But this is using real time, or not real time. I wish it was real time ray tracing, but it's doing like multi-bounce. It's actually figuring out like the index of refraction going through materials. It's figuring out subsurface scattering. So if you have like skin or something, it'll have the color on the outside, and then you can assign like an inner color which is penetrated by light, that it will kind of give skin warmth. So there's a lot of like realism in Blender. And it's crazy because it's all free. So it's the thing that made me start to notice Blender is I've been following this guy, Heavy Poly, for a while, since he's like an industry expert, and he switched over to Blender. He used to use Modo, which is the program I use at work, but he recently switched over to Blender. So I was like, well, if he's using it, then it must be good. And it is.
You use Modo? Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
he
cool.
used to use Modo. I don't know if any, have you heard of Modo?
I have a colleague I work with that uses it. I actually just had him do something for me that I'm working on for the project I have at the moment.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, if you have any, if you ever need any help, let me know. I'm way better versed in Modo.
I do.
But yeah, that's an awesome program, but it is not cheap. So.
Yeah.
So Colin, maybe it's a good idea that we, wrap it up, or I wrap up the recording. I like the idea of doing an exploration that, you've been more in the teacher role this time, but if we messed around with some of the fluid mechanics and the smoke and other things, like we could save our mugs and have a liquidy mug.
Yeah, I would love to. If you want to use your own mug, I think that would be great. I could also provide like a standard mug, so you wouldn't have to like come in with something. I could just give you a Blender file that you could start with that's like kind of set up for it, and you could just play with it on your computer. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I don't want to put you to too much work. I mean, it's awesome that you've been able to make the time to do these, sessions. But yeah, I mean, if we could next week or the week after, or whenever you want to do it, I'll set it up. So, well, great. So,
cool.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everyone. I think we're going to end the formal recording. And of course, people can kind of ask questions for a little bit after. But, at some point we should let Colin have dinner. So thanks. Thanks, everyone, for participating.
Thank you so much.